Welcome back, folks. This is the Foolish Optimist Podcast. I'm your host, Amy McDonald. If you're new here, we are on the hunt for the next generation of leaders in the United States. And if you haven't yet, please do subscribe wherever you're listening. You can rate and review it as well. That's always helpful. And now on to the fun part. Our guest for today hails from the great state of Maine. Jordan Wood is running for the U.S. Senate. He was born and raised in Maine. He, after college, went to Washington, D.C. and began a career taking on the establishment and battling corruption. Most recently, he co-founded and led Democracy First, a bipartisan pro-democracy organization dedicated to combating growing threats to the free and fair administration and certification of our elections. And he's previously served as the vice president of End Citizens United, an organization dedicated to getting big money out of politics by taking on leaders in both parties to refuse corporate PACs. And he has served as the chief of staff to Congresswoman Katie Porter. He is currently living with his husband and their daughter Ella in Bristol. And if you want to follow along with them on pretty much any social, it's going to be Jordan Wood Maine spelled out, with the exception of X, which is Jordan Wood ME. So Jordan, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful to have you.
It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me, Amy.
So we're going to start this podcast the way we start every single episode. Why are you running in 2026 and why the Senate seat?
Yeah, I got into this race in April because I believe that the future of our democracy, the rule of law, and the American dream, I don't mean that in a rhetorical way, but in a very real way, the idea that you and I were raised with, that most Americans were, that if you worked hard and you followed the rules and you treated people well and told the truth, that you could achieve the future that you want in this country with hard work. I believe that is all being put out of reach for so many Americans, that fundamentally this is what has put our democracy at such risk. And this campaign is really focused on two issues that I believe we have to take back Congress. We need to elect a Democratic Senate to accomplish these things and to stand up for Donald Trump, who I think is the gravest threat to our democracy right now in this moment. So the campaign is focused on, one, fighting political corruption and democracy reform, protecting the future of our democracy by making it work. That's been my life's work. And the second is affordability, specifically the issues of healthcare, housing, and childcare. And that, that's what I hear every day from voters, but it's also the background and issues that my family dealt with growing up in Lewiston, Maine, where I was born. When I was born, my mom had to leave the workforce to provide childcare for my twin brother and I. She also, a few years later, had to go back to work because the church my dad served at the time couldn't afford to provide our family with health insurance because of skyrocketing costs. Yeah. I started work at 16, worked my way through high school and college, was only able to go to college because of need-based student loans. I still graduated with $100,000 in student loan debt. Yes. But, the future was still possible to achieve.
That's a great answer. But let's first double click into some of this, what I think is a very bipartisan issue of corruption and money in politics, right? You've served as the vice president to End Citizens United. And realistically, we know this. We know that absolute power and money corrupts people, even the best of us, when you start to garner this amount. What are your thoughts as it pertains to, obviously, like you said, we need new leaders. We need democratically held Congress who can pass these laws. But what are your thoughts around reaching across the aisle to maybe people that are of a different, political belief system or a different generation or things like that around this topic of corruption and topic of money in politics? Because from an outsider's perspective, when somebody gives you $10 million to run for an office, that to me, I don't want to say it looks like a bribe, but I would expect someone who gave me $10 million to come knocking on the door at some point asking for something.
Exactly. I just to start with that, that's how the American people feel. There's no free lunch. Why would these corporations give you so much money if they were not getting something in return? And I think it's really easy for us to talk about this, Democratic leaders to talk about this in the context of the jumbo jet from Qatar that Donald Trump took. Mm-hmm. Why is that so viscerally problematic to us at our core? Is because why would Qatar give you $1 billion airplane and expect nothing in return? They're
Right.
doing it to buy favor and influence its corruption. But at the same time, when private equity firms, Wall Street banks, and major pharmaceutical companies are giving money in massive amount to a politician, the American people know there's a reason for that. It's not charity. As much as Donald Trump wants to say Qatar is just being nice to him, I
Our
don't.
closest pals, Qatar.
So I mean, I would say that it's important. Let me just say how I got into the issue of corruption, money, and politics reform, because it's not, I was not a middle school, high schooler saying I got to go fight political corruption. It was
Right.
only through my work in community organizing and issue advocacy around human rights and climate change and gun safety, and realizing, I graduated college in 2012, and in 2014, the Democratic congressman I worked for, Brad Schneider, lost in what was really one of the full midterms post Citizens United.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, there was a moment weeks out from Election Day where a new super PAC popped up and dropped $3 million into the race. And we lost by 2,000 votes.
Right.
And that combined with my experience working on the Hill just out of college to see how the corruption was getting worse by the day, by the month. And I say, like, they're finding new rules to break. They're finding more and more money to put into the system to influence politicians. And so when I helped start End Citizens United in 2015 and launched that organization, it was because people I worked for, like Brad Schneider, who are true public servants and dedicated to making people's lives better and support campaign finance reform, had no ally in that fight. The same way we have at the time, you had pro-choice groups that would elect pro-choice Democrats, NARAL and Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
You had pro-environmental groups, LCB and Sierra Club, that helped elect candidates who were going to champion that issue. There was nothing helping to elect candidates that were going to prioritize this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we created with End Citizens United, and helped elevate the salience of that issue in how it was a priority in Congress. But also our largest cycle was after Trump was elected in 2016 and helping to elect a Democratic Congress. And the candidates that cycle understood very clearly that voters were angry about a corrupt political system and legislation. I mean, the one piece of legislation Donald Trump passed in his first term was a massive tax giveaway to corporations and the wealthiest.
Yeah.
And that corruption was like, that all makes sense. And so, the wave of candidates that rejected corporate PAC money in that election cycle was about proving to voters whose side you were on. And it is the opportunity to say they're funded by corporate PACs, and they voted to make a historic cut to corporate taxes. Here's why. You can trust me. You can trust me not to do that. I'm not taking their money. And that's a powerful thing to say to a voter who is very cynical about this corrupt political system, who is looking for you not to just tell them what you're going to do in Washington, what you're going to vote for, champion.
Right.
They want to, you can give them this proof point today, make that promise to them. And that's where you get trust.
Yes. Your trust level between the electorate and the people they are electing right now it's wearing thin. And I think part of it is because of exactly what we're talking about, right? These, what seemingly almost quid pro quo donations for what you're going to pass, or even just, some of these people and some of these corporations have so much money that it's not a direct quid pro quo, but it's lording over these people's heads, just waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Like waiting for that call.
Yep. And if I could share one example of this, Amy, that has always stuck with me, is at End Citizens United, we contribute, and this is part of the strategy, is contributing to campaigns and groups that are, we also do independent expenditure, but I would get to go on donor retreat with the senators and party leaders because we were one of the largest donors. And that's an issue. You're sitting with dinner with senators. Everyone else just fucking hates me at the table because I'm there to try to basically take. I'm trying to end this system that they. Yeah. But I was with the Senate Democrats, a small retreat, and it was right after they had taken a vote to pass legislation that would roll back some of the regulations in Dodd-Frank after the financial collapse.
Yeah.
And it was something that sort of, it increased the amount of assets a bank had to have to, it's
To be
really
like
the weeds.
FDIC insured. Yeah.
Yeah. So like a
Right.
bank had to have like $500 billion in assets. And for a lot of rural senators, both Dem and Republican, this was something that local community banks were asking for. And I mean, I live here in Maine. I bank at Bangor Savings. There's lots of community banks, but in reality, this reform was truly being championed by the largest banks that wanted to make this regulation. So they had lifted the cap up to like over $500 billion. And I was sitting with two senators who were so angry that their constituents were calling them, telling them that they were corrupt because they take so much money from Wells Fargo and Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, and that they did this for, like, I didn't do it because of this money. I did it because of the community banks in our state. I said, I agree with you. I know that. These $5,000 checks. Yeah, I know that's why you did it. Not because you got these $5,000 checks from the PACs, but explain that to a voter. Explain to a voter that all these $5,000 checks you took in from the banks and their lobbyists and then delivered this reform that they wanted. Explain to them that they're just supposed to trust you, that you weren't influenced by that.
Right.
You can't. It's a perception of corruption, that the only way you can neutralize that perception is by removing it.
You have to nip it right in the bud. And like, I worked on a campaign up here in New York in 2014 as well, right around that.
Which one?
That time. Dominic Recchia Jr., he ran in New York's 11th district against Michael Grimm. For those of you who don't remember Michael Grimm, he is a preview of what was to come 10 years later. He threatened a reporter while he still had a hot mic on, and he said he was going to throw them off a balcony.
And then he went to prison, right? Eventually. Trump pardoned him, I think.
Just like this year. Earlier this year, Michael Grimm got pardoned. Michael Grimm and I also have the same birthday, but we're 10 years apart, which really, like, as an astrology girly, I was like, oh.
Recchia was like, that was 2014 was such a terrible cycle. That was like, the Grimm seat was like the one we were still going to win in spite of ourselves, and lost it anyway.
And he will openly admit it. The candidate will openly admit it. He wasn't a perfect candidate by any means. He was very good in New York City local politics, but at like the state and any sort of international level, it was a little bit too much. And of course, you're talking about Staten Island, right? They like violence, and they always have.
They like a bully. They like a bully.
They love a bully. They do, and that's like something that I'm coming to terms with as it pertains to like the entire United States, is that some people just like to see bullies in power, and they think that means that they're really strong. Going back to our issue of trust, I think something that's coming up, or that I see a lot, especially in my circles, is like insider trading. I'm from North Carolina originally. Right around COVID time, it came out that both of our senators at the time were doing insider trading. And there's an entire ecosystem of it. There's an app that's been created so you can follow your senator's trade. So does the anti-corruption movement that you are pushing for, does that fall into that as well?
Absolutely. And when I was Katie Porter's chief of staff, we worked on legislation called Stock Act 2.0, which was one of the early pieces of legislation to go after this. It also exposes the crisis of trust, which is when the Stock Act was first passed in 2010, it was just to bring disclosure to those stock trades with the assumption that the transparency was enough to stop the corruption. So that members of Congress would not engage in this insider trading if it was disclosed, because prior it was not disclosed. And we're now at a point where it's not stopping it. And so what we need now is a total ban on members of Congress being able to individually trade stocks. Again, because it's the perception. If you, to be honest, a lot of these members of Congress I've been a chief of staff. It's a crazy busy schedule and work, and they're not trading stock. But it looks anytime your portfolio is going up related to things that if you're in the financial services and you own
Yes.
it's like I don't know that there are that many members of Congress that are actually doing this,
Right.
but the perception is there, and
that matters.
that
Yeah.
weakens the trust. And so I've committed that I will never trade individual stocks. The same position Katie Porter had when I was her chief of staff in Congress, and I'll fight for a ban on all members. But to what you're saying about this, I say one of the few issues left that is between the two parties is corruption. And the reason that this is still allowed to go on is because there are leaders of both parties that won't stop it.
Right. And also, again, it's like, especially once you hit that like 20 or 30-year mark, if you're used to a certain lifestyle and it comes from whatever version of corruption you're talking about, then it is really hard to stop that. I mean, it's like trying to tell someone to like quit smoking after 20 years. They know it's bad, but
It's hard.
It's going to take a lot of work to get it done. Yeah.
Yep. But Ella, it's important that the people we send to Congress know what their job is. Their job is just to serve and represent their constituents and not enrich themselves. And they get paid really well. For most Americans, $175,000 salary is a lot of money. So
yeah, and they've got great health care.
Very good health care and other benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Got a gym. They have a gym still.
So I would like to run for Congress so I can get access to a free gym. Thank you. Okay, so let's move forward a little bit. You've been in Maine for the majority of your life, with the exception of your time on the Hill in D.C. How do you think being someone who was a chief of staff for, a highly visible member of Congress like Katie Porter, how do you think that's going to affect the way that you do business in the Senate when we're manifesting, when you get elected?
Yeah. I was Katie's chief of staff when she was a freshman member of Congress. And when I'm elected next year, will be a freshman senator. And I think this is directly to Katie, also like me, comes from a working class background, a family that lived close to paycheck growing up. That's the life we know. Mm-hmm. And we also know the power that the government in Congress has to make real positive change in people's lives, and take very seriously the opportunity that we have in government service to enact that change. And so the idea of like, you got to wait around years to build seniority and then you can get to do what you want. We don't have time to wait. And that's how Katie and I both approach this job. And a few examples of this was her chief during the pandemic, and Orange County actually had one of the first COVID cases in America. So we were sort of working on COVID response from day one. I remember Katie was one of the members that first demanded Robert Redfield, the CDC director, come to Congress to brief members. I remember there was, I think, 14 members of Congress that showed up to the first briefing. 3 weeks later, when he came back for the next one, every single member of Congress was there. But one of the problems early in the pandemic, if you remember, was around testing. And not just that there weren't enough tests, but that the insurance was trying somewhere around $600 for a test. And so we had Americans that thought they had COVID and did, but weren't getting tested because they couldn't afford it. Right. And so if you're, to go back in time, if you're someone who's symptomatic with COVID, that's a $600 risk that you're taking because you might just have a cold or strep throat or something else. And so people weren't getting tested. And in a government oversight committee hearing where Robert Redfield was there testifying, she got him in that hearing to commit to use an existing authority that he had as CDC director in a national pandemic health emergency to pay for free diagnostic testing for everybody. And that started the next day. And so, that's just an example of how do you use the position you have as a freshman member of Congress, as the lowest ranking person on the oversight committee. How do you use that position of power to deliver for people that need help? And that, and it wasn't just the authority was immediately granted. But that video of her grilling Redfield, it got 30 million views in the first 24 hours. And so people knew that they could go demand this test and that it would be paid for, covered. And that saved lives. I don't know how many lives was saved. And so that's how I would approach it up, is like, don't tell me I can't do this because I'm a freshman. Don't tell me I can't do this until I've climbed my way to the chair of the Appropriations Committee. Do whatever you can, because you have a tremendous amount of power that so many working families that need help don't have. And take that role very seriously. And if you do, you can deliver a lot.
You can make change happen for hundreds of
For
millions
people.
of people. I mean, quite literally. Like early COVID too, also, right? You have a $600, it's that $600 risk. But like very early COVID, we didn't have any, like, you found out you got COVID and you were like, great, thanks. We didn't have any way to combat it. And I say this as one of, like, I didn't know Orange County had it first because New York, we were so entrenched in it. And I got COVID, I think it was March like 6th. We had people who were at APAC actually in my office who came back and brought it to New York. Yeah. And I had just chopped my hair off from, like, you know, my middle ribs to where it is now. And everyone, oh my God, you're so beautiful. You look so great. And then like the next day I was like, I have a fever and I can't breathe. And I was like, I think I have something.
Yeah. We didn't find out that Orange County had the first case is actually later, but we, at about 10% of Orange County, I think it's 10%, it is Chinese immigrants or one generation. So a lot of constituents had family in Wuhan, and we were trying to get information on this situation. They were concerned. They had family that were traveling back and forth. And so initially it was about helping constituents understand what was going on before we understood that. And that's the link that probably brought an early case.
That makes sense. Somebody traveling. Yeah, I think I already know the answer to this question, but what do you think as a senator or as an elected official? What do you think your job is as it pertains to the American people?
I think it's pretty simple. It is go to work every day with a clear understanding that to the best of your ability, you need to serve and represent the people of your state. And if you think about every decision in that context, not, well, how do I do that and help these corporate donors or this lobbyist or this interest group, or what? Instead of weighing it, it's like, no. These powerful interests, they have lobbyists. You're there to be the people's check on their power. And that brings clarity to how you make decisions. And Susan Collins has been in there for 30 years. I could go on about all these times where she's not thought that way. I mean, just one that, and you're millennial, you can relate to this, but I remember before they had passed, the CFPB really existed, and had passed consumer protection, that there was banks could charge overdraft, not just overdraft fees, big overdraft fees. And then every day that you were in the red, you got it. And so
they compounded. There was compounding fees.
A $10 mistake, a $10 shoot, I bought an extra beer at the bar. I mean, college, what do you expect? Turns into a $200 expense. And that happened to me personally, but also like, same. I remember the number of times like I had $50 to give to a friend to get them out of their hole because it was compounding. And it's just the stress, the anxiety that it causes to only people that don't have money in their bank account, right? So
to the people who need the most grace at that moment in time.
Yes. And it's embarrassing. Ask my parent. I'm like, oh, mom and dad, I let's just help me deal with this, because it's going to be a bigger problem if you don't.
And I will write it down and I will pay you back. I promise. It's going on the ledger.
Yes. And so, you know what I'm talking about. Earlier this year, Susan Collins voted to eliminate that.
Yeah.
Because the big banks wanted it. This is going to be a transfer of wealth over 10 years of $5 billion. $5 billion being taken away from people who do not have money in their bank account. That's why they're being charged these fees. They
Right.
do not have money in their bank account to the wealthiest, largest banks in the country. Now, if you're there every day to serve and represent the people of Maine, who are you helping? Who are you helping? And that's it is just, and that's just that one vote. There's so much, can't talk about it all, but like that one is one of the many that just resonates with me. And it can only resonate if you've been in this situation. If you've
Right.
had no money in your bank account, what it is. And
Like I completely understand the situation as well. I went through the exact same thing. But for our younger listeners, there was a time where we didn't have apps on our phones that told us our bank balance. Like you had to go on the website and you had to go through your receipts and you had to make sure if you had that little money. I mean, one time I literally landed with 10 cents in my account and I had 3 days before my payday, and I went through everything. I was like, there's nothing, no sneaky debits coming out. Like everything is paid for, done. And something came out like a half a day early, and I was then same thing. And then it was a very different time, but it still happens to people today.
I mean, Amy, you used to have to go to the ATM, put your card in to check balance. I remember doing that. And I also
still have the option today, and I'm like, who's using this?
Yeah, right. And I remember too, like there, if you didn't have a credit card, like my parents are very, do not get a credit card until you have a job. I mean, yeah. But I remember like intentionally, like, oh, I need to put gas in the car, intentionally overdrafting the account. Because knowing what the consequences were, but like, well, I'll get some money in there in the next 24 hours. I'll only be paying 1 day of fees,
which is only like $180 instead for the $15 you went over or something.
Yeah.
We had one girl in our dorm who like her favorite thing to do would be to call the banks and get you your money back. And so she's like there with your credit card and your license, and she's on the phone. She's like, it's Amy McDonald. Her name was Madison.
But
fighting for every dollar for all of us. And we were like,
God bless her. God bless her, because she was following the news, and that reform had been passed. That consumer protection reform had been passed in Dodd-Frank. That enabled us to do that. That's God bless her. What a saint.
I mean, just an app, and that's you guys. The young people these days are getting drunk and calling their Congress people. We, as like juniors in college, would get drunk, and she would rectify our bank balances. And then we all started listening, and then we were like, we can do this ourselves now that we know what works. But yeah, that is textbook not working for your constituents. Nobody wants to pay an overdraft fee. And by the way, for anyone listening who doesn't believe this, I'm going to just say it anyways. The banks don't need that money.
No.
They don't.
No.
They don't. They're taking money out of Americans' pockets to line big banks' pockets.
Yep. I mean, the other, again, it's simple to me, but Katie Porter ran for the U.S. Senate last election cycle. She lost the primary to Adam Schiff, and the cryptocurrency industry spent $20 million to beat Katie Porter in that primary. It's the most money. Fact check me on this, but I still believe it's the most money any interest group has ever spent to beat somebody in a Democratic primary. And
in Democratic primary, yes. I think the Republican primary that wins that one is J.D. Vance in Ohio.
Yeah. That's probably
I think you're right.
Of any group. And so why did they do that? Katie didn't have a voting record on crypto. There no legislation been passed in the House. She wasn't on financial services anymore. There was no regulation. She had no position on it. Why did they do that? Because they knew that she understands what her job is.
Yeah.
To serve and represent people and consumers, and to regulate crypto in a way that best serves consumers, not the industry. And that no industry gets to write its own regulations. And they knew they would never be able to buy her. And so they didn't want her in the U.S. Senate. And that's pretty raw, but that is what we're dealing with here. Is anytime you see, the other interest group that spent a tremendous amount of money was AIPAC against her. Yeah. And we, by any standards we had a good voting record on Israeli issues consistently, very good. And I mean,
Interesting.
AIPAC,
Okay.
it was, so, I mean, they would do individual fundraisers and so, but again, her voting record by their standards was, this was pre-Gaza
Everything.
war, pre-Gaza. But, you know, why did they spend so much money? Because they knew that she will, in her role as a member of Congress or senator, do what's best for this country, because that's where her constituents are, the people she serves,
Yeah.
and will
It's
always
crazy.
prioritize that. And no amount of money would ever get you to place above that the interests of another country. And they, moneyed interests do not want that.
No.
Do not want that. So it just look, I mean, in Maine, Susan Collins is a super PAC that just disclosed it raised $5 million.
Yeah.
One contribution, $2 million from the CEO of Blackstone. Private
Jamie
equity
Dimon?
firm. No, Jamie Dimon's Goldman Sachs.
Oh, damn it. I should
Stephen
know Blackstone.
Schwartzman.
I mean, we know that's like,
Is,
we are a company town in New York and it is finance. So I should know who.
Blackstone's private equity,
Yeah.
and the CEO of that, Stephen Schwartzman, gave $2 million to a single super PAC dedicated singularly to Susan Collins.
In Maine.
Well,
of
why
all
would he?
places.
Why would he do that?
Yeah.
He's just a nice guy? No, because private equity is trying to deregulate and take over the childcare industry to
Everything.
create for-profit child. Bring that into the for-profit. Is in Maine, we're dealing with a real devastating situation of private equity buying up mobile home parks and raising lot fees to a group of people that have no political voice to oppose it. And so that is, I mean, anywhere Stephen Schwartzman and Blackstone are investing, probably be afraid. Ask some questions. Ask some questions. Why are they doing that?
We're going through the same thing right now. In the last 7 days before the primary in New York City, super PACs for Andrew Cuomo spent more money than the Democratic National Party has on hand in 7 days. Same shit. Like, they know Zohran Mamdani is not viable. They know that he cares exactly.
It's not for sale.
Yeah, he cares about the 9 million people that live in the city limits and nobody else, which is his job, crazily enough.
And thank God he won. And
he won in one pass. We finally all figured out how that works.
So it's so powerful, like that, when that, I was at $30 million in 7 days.
Just about.
Yeah. And to see it fail is so powerful. And I think that we are going to have that again. I mean,
it's going to happen time and time and time again.
I get asked at town halls, like, how are you going to overcome the moneyed interest on the other side? And I say, we're going to raise the resources that we need to win. And I have trust and faith in the people of Maine, and that they'll get to know me and they'll trust me. And money can't buy trust. And I said we don't take money from corporate PACs or lobbyists. I won't trade individual stocks center. But beyond that, I've also committed I'll never become a lobbyist after serving in the Senate.
That should be illegal. That needs to be illegal.
And I would support legislation to ban that, because voters have become really cynical that members of Congress, they're auditioning for a lucrative job after service. And you know what? They're right. Because half of them do go into lobbying and make.
Can I tell you what this is the vibe of? It's what all of reality television has now become. All these people are just showing up so they can get 1 million followers, so they can then go get on brand trips and stuff. And I don't want to compare our political system to reality TV, even though it would be a great show. It's very entertaining, horrifying, but entertaining. But that's the vibe, which makes things less fun.
It's a great analogy, because you could say, well, that would be a real twist onto reality TV if a contestant was like, I refuse to ever take a branding contract.
Corporate sponsorship.
I'm just here for the thrill of reality TV. I'm just here
to find love.
Not for sale. I'm just here for love. I truly want to find a spouse. But that's what we're having town hall. We're having town halls in every county. I just had one last night. And as senator, I'll have a town hall in every county every year. Susan Collins hasn't had one in 25 years.
How many counties does Maine have?
16.
Okay, that's doable. That's very doable.
Totally
in
doable.
52 weeks, Obviously, we cut
Totally.
some out for holidays, so drop it down 16 and 45-ish weeks. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. But it also, I'm not in the Senate yet, but it informs this campaign. What are the issues that we're
Right.
focused on? What's the feedback that voters have? What are their hopes and their fears? What are they worried about? And that's all, like, there's a reason town halls are a really fundamental part of our democracy. And the fact that she hasn't had one in 25 years is a
So she hasn't
problem.
had one like literally since her first term.
Right. When we were in elementary school.
We were learning how to read. Well, and so, you've already mentioned that the big issues that your family feels and that everyone in Maine feels are very similar to the same. It's across the board, right? Affordability, the affordability crisis, childcare. These are all things that almost every American family feels in one form or fashion. And like, people talk about New York a lot and they're like, well, you guys make so much money. And I'm like, yeah, but preschool is the cost of 1 year of college here. So even our wealthy people in major cities are feeling this. What I would rather talk about is a little bit more Maine specific. You guys have some of the highest voter turnout in the country. That's the first time I've gotten to say that. Everyone else that I've interviewed, I'm like, you have some of the lowest voter turnout. So, I mean, I guess my question is, with this year being an off year, the last time Senate was in an off year, a non-presidential year for Maine was like 2018. So obviously the demographics have probably changed. Things have changed. How are you going to build this broad coalition across 16 counties, across everybody that wants to show up? Because everyone does show up, which is not everyone, but it's like 70. It was 78% at the highest, 74. That's
number one in the country. We have an awesome Secretary of State, Shanna Bellows, who really takes very seriously her job of, my goal is to get every voter that wants to vote, make sure they have the ability to vote, regardless who you vote for. And that's what the job is. And it's amazing what you can accomplish when you approach your job that way. And I think Maine I mean, to be honest, it feels like we're voting every like 2 or 3 months here, because we have, and I live in the town of Bristol.
Okay.
And we'll have we're voting on a bond bill to build a new gymnasium to the school. Mm-hmm. Literally, we go in with a piece of paper, check off yes or no, and you put it fold it up, and you put it in a wooden box that's about 100 years old, and then they hand count them. And I mean, I kid you not, last year in the town next to me, they had one of these about whether or not they can change the law to sell liquor on Sundays, and it failed by one vote.
I didn't know Maine was. I grew up in North Carolina. We were a no liquor until noon on Sunday. You were allowed to have liquor after church, but not before church.
That's why New England has our Puritan history and heritage. Like, there's some of these. You can't this is the other great. In the town of Bremen, no stores allowed to sell any alcohol ever.
Oh, it's a full dry town.
Yeah.
That's probably not the place for me, if I'm being honest. If we're talking about where I might move in Maine, which we're not, but if we were, I would say no thank you.
Yeah. But so that is we got off track onto liquor laws here, but the truth is that it's a highly engaged electorate, highly informed. Yeah. And that's what got me into the race. I said I was recruited by my neighbors to run because right after Trump's inauguration, people were organizing, organically started demonstrating and congregating on bridges in Maine, especially in where we are in the mid-coast areas, bridges, peninsulas, and people just started congregating. And what was powerful about it? It's fucking cold here.
I was about to say, January and May,
And so the bridges are kind of wind tunnels, right? And so you had people standing in frigid weather with the American flag just there. And you drive by honking, it creates community. I mean, the first speech I gave on this campaign was in late March, early April in Booth Bay.
Okay.
800, which is a town in Lincoln County where we live. 800 people were there. There's 30,000 people in the county.
Okay.
And in the wintertime, you had 800 people on the common
green.
Great
turnout.
And so there's just, we got just demographically too, older white educated people are the number one voter turnout. That's Maine's the oldest population in the country. Lincoln County, where I live, is the oldest county in the oldest state.
Wow.
It is 95% white, one of the whitest states in the country, and like our primary could be 65% college educated. The other thing is that since Susan Collins was elected in 2020, last reelected in 2020, the inward migration to the state, I was just looking at a report the other day about this, 75% of the inward migration has college degrees.
Inward migration meaning?
People that are moving in from other states.
Okay.
So
I gotcha.
Which is, the pandemic really for the first time in my life is the first time that Maine has had that the birth rate outpaced the death rate.
Wow.
In my life. And that is people, the way that remote work has been enabled, it carried over from COVID. People want to live in Maine. It's an amazing state. I love it. And I was able to move back here during the pandemic. And a lot of other people were too. And it has been it's been helpful for the economy, but it's also it's helpful for the demographics electorally. Because a lot of the people are moving from New York City, Boston, Washington, D.C., other places that are unaffordable to live in.
Yeah.
And people want to start a family, wanted to do it in Maine. And you mentioned that even if you're wealthy, the cost of childcare in a place like New York City, I say, what's crazy is in Washington, D.C., like New York, if someone were to tell me they have 3 children, my immediate reaction is like, are you a billionaire? How would you have 3 children? How could you possibly afford that?
City?
And,
yeah.
And it used
I saw someone with 3 children the other day, and I was like, oh my God, they
oh
must
my
be
God,
really wealthy. And it was a very famous actress. But the thing is, she didn't catch my eye. The 3
and
kids
a dog,
did.
and they have a dog, and you're like, I don't understand.
The 3 kids did. She's like someone you see on TV all the time. It wasn't even her. I was like, oh my God, 3 children. Wow. Highfalutin in my neighborhood.
Yep. How?
How?
I think it's just a good illustration of how broken the system is. Both my parents were of 5.
Yeah.
And they were lower middle class families. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't, having children's not an affordability thing. Having kids was cheap. And if anything, it's like, but my grandmother was born into extreme poverty. Yeah. There are 7 kids in her family.
Right. Well, yeah, of course. And at different times, yeah, my parents are like one of 4 and one of 3. I'm one of 4, and I think about that a lot, right? And my parents are not, as they've gotten older, they've become much more financially stable. But when we were kids, it was, lights were turning off with the water turned off on a school picture day. And I was a teen, so I lost my marbles. Obviously I was like, you hate me. And they're like, yes, this is it. It's a personal attack on you.
We didn't pay the water bill because we knew it was picture day.
Because we knew it would ruin your day, right?
Yeah.
But this goes back to the affordability crisis always, right? I say that all the time. I'm like, you want the younger generations to have more kids. Make it 1 iota easier.
Yep.
1 iota. We're not asking for a lot.
Yep. And I think when I talk about universal childcare, we can't do that. Can't afford it. But
Why not?
I say, first off, we have done big things to solve big problems in this country before. We created Social Security because elderly people were in poverty. We created Medicare because there was no way for older people to have health insurance. We created a public school system so you can live anywhere in this country and know that your child can go to a good school. We've done big things, and we can do that again. We just have to try. We have to work towards it. And if you want to say we don't have enough money, let me tell you this. When Susan Collins was elected senator, there was 100 billionaires in this country. Now there's 800. We have people that are worth $350 billion. We just need to reform our tax system so that this government has the revenue to provide universal child care. We can do it, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we definitely can't if you're already giving up that this is possible.
I think that's one of the big themes that I have seen across this entire podcast, right? I've been doing this now. I think I've recorded somewhere around like 25 episodes. Pretty much everyone comes from the time period, the generations of America where we were told we could do anything, be anything. And because of where we were born, you could literally do anything you wanted. And then as we grew into adults, the government and so many of our peers and so many of our elders just started saying, no, we can't do that, which
Yep.
is like the antithesis of what was like beaten into our brain.
Yep. And it's sad. And I've been thinking a lot about it because of the elimination of USAID and our role in the world. Just USAID alone, I mean, we're looking at potentially 15 million people could die over the next 5 years unnecessarily because of the elimination of this. But my mother actually grew up in the Congo. My grandfather was a medical missionary. And
Cool.
when he graduated medical school, he picked up his family. My mom was an infant. She's the youngest of 5. And they went to the Congo in 1960 when the country was getting its independence for the first time and helped start a hospital. He helped start one of the first blood banks in the Congo. And so many people I know that went into medicine to be doctors would have actually loved to be able to do that.
100%. Oh, yeah.
But so many of them would say, I'm graduating undergrad and then medical school already $200,000 in debt. I have to go into specialized medicine because I would love to go run a hospital in the Congo.
Yeah.
But I can't afford to do that. But when my grandfather graduated University of Kansas Medical School in 1952, he zero debt. And so he had the opportunity to pursue his vocation and calling in medicine to serve and take care of people that need it without the idea of like, do I have to be a neurologist or a heart surgeon, or I somehow need to go make money. And that's the loss. That's what this system has done that is so tragic. And that we're so far and beyond even talking about that. And friends with law degrees, the same thing is they would love to work in consumer protection or provide legal aid to underserved community.
Yeah.
But they graduate with so much debt that they get forced into corporate law.
Right. And then they're miserable for 10 or 15 years. And this extends to like almost every single group of people that are taking out loans for college. But it's also like we've set up a system where you have to have a job to have health care. Like how many people, these are like completely intertwined. How many people would start their own business if they had healthcare to fall back on, or if they didn't have the student loans, either or. And most people need both, right? They need to pay off their student loans and they need healthcare. So,
as I support universal healthcare is a public option into the marketplace. Is create a government-run nonprofit healthcare option, force Blue Cross Blue Shield to compete with that. That's the only way we're going to drive down prices. In Maine, we're looking at as much as a 30% premium increase next year. But we've got to fix this broken healthcare system. It's
exactly what you just said. It's making the market more competitive, right? We are in a chokehold from like 5 to 7 different healthcare companies that are screwing all of us over.
And you can't. Why I'm running is this idea of we need to restore the idea in America that you can achieve the future that you want. And that's having the ability to pursue the profession that you want, to live where you want to live in the community you want to live in, and be mobile and having healthcare that is not tied to your employer is essential to do that, as is housing. We live in a community in Lincoln County where we have a 7-month-old baby, and we have a hospital about 15 minutes away. If that closed, as we look at 5 rural hospitals in Maine could close, the next closest hospital would be over an hour. So
and this is with like the closure with the big beautiful bill. Is that?
Yeah. Yes. Our hospital is not. It has enough private funding, even though it operates at a loss. It's not a jeopardy to close. But for people that are in more rural counties like we are, that I don't know that my husband and I would have moved here when we did 5 years ago if there had not been a hospital, because we knew we were going to have kids.
Right.
And my parents are retired. They live in Waldoboro, a few towns down from us. They're in their late 60s. At that age, you can have a health crisis at any point in time. They need a hospital close by. That's a matter of life or death. And so it is going to really undercut the ability of communities in our state to have an economic future when that access is cut off. So in housing, childcare, healthcare, to me, it's like all connected in terms of how do you create a country where people can achieve the future that they want.
Yeah. And even if you are the most cynical person in the world, those three things are economic decisions.
Yeah.
Even if you don't care about the future of the United States, you don't care about people following their dreams, you want them to all be corporate lawyers and tied to a desk, it will still be an economic decision for our country to make and produce more. Which people hate when I make that argument, but I'm like, sometimes some people just talk money. That's all they do.
Yep. It's all possible. It's all possible. And if I'm in York County, I mean, I'm going down to York County for a house party later today. I was up in a rustic and fork tip of the northern state. Those three issues will be brought up everywhere.
All 16 counties. Yeah.
All 16 counties. All of these issues are worse in more rural counties, but it is where I think that's how we are going to win this campaign.
It's the golden ticket.
Yeah, we're building an operation in contesting every county in the state. And I said that these people have the same problems, and they've abandoned the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party has abandoned them, and that they have not delivered the changes that they need in their lives around affordability. And that's a huge problem. But when Barack Obama ran for president, he won 15 of 16 counties twice. And so if you want to write these voters off as just being racist and right wing, I mean,
they're not.
Susan Collins won 16 of 60 counties multiple times. Well, Barack Obama was winning them. So I said, we'll go into every one of these counties, earn their trust first through these town halls, through conversations and listening, and then delivering and making and restoring that trust that I mean what I say, and that I'm truly here to serve and represent you, and that means solving these problems. And I think that's how we'll be successful, but not just in this election, but in how do we have hope for a future in this country, and that's how.
Yeah. I think that's kind of our perfect spot to start to wrap up. So can you tell everyone your website name and where they can find you? And then we're going to do a couple rapid fire get to know you questions.
electjordan.com and Jordan Wood Maine or Jordan Wood ME on X.
Fabulous. Okay, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, are you a coffee or a tea or otherwise caffeinated person?
Coffee.
Oh, thank God. I had someone the other day be like, I don't drink caffeine. And I was like, I have to leave. I don't want to. Okay. What was the last book you read cover to cover?
Moral Ambition.
Moral Ambition. Okay.
I think by Rutger Bergman, which our conversation would indicate to me that you would actually really like it. It's about the moral ambition is something that we should be cultivating and inspiring people, because that's how we achieve social change. If you look in history, people like William Wilberforce and the individuals who ended the slave trade, eventually slavery, there was no financial motivation in that work. It was just a moral ambition to do good, and that we don't cultivate that in our culture anymore, but we need to. It's critically important that we have people driven by moral ambition. That's a good thing. Not everybody needs to be driven by making money. And it's just a great read and
that
reminder.
Also can be extrapolated to our entire country, right? Like, not every single thing needs to be a profit endeavor.
Agreed.
Like, we cannot have good healthcare for people if we have to abide by shareholders. Yeah. It just doesn't work.
But moral ambition, would read it. And my father's a pastor. That's not a profession you can ever make money, and you're not supposed to be driven by money to do it. So I connect to it very much.
as someone who grew up around the mega churches, some of our pastors would beg to differ. Not the ones that we grew up going to, but
I would say they were people who didn't have moral ambition and went into the wrong profession.
Yeah, literally. Okay, if you had to eat one meal every day for a year, what would it be?
Mediterranean. Yeah, Mediterranean.
Something.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not really a meal, but I'll accept the
I
answer.
mean, like hummus, chicken, veg.
Like a
something.
shawarma wrap of some sort, maybe.
That's it.
Or
Yeah. Do you know
okay.
kava? Oh yeah, you've lived in
Yeah,
DC.
we have kava. Yeah,
I would eat
we have
kava.
kava in New York now.
I would eat kava every day.
You can make kava for better at home, but that's just my suggestion.
Yeah.
Because you have so much time on your hands, and you're not trying to win 16 counties and then win a senatorial race.
Or have a 7-month-old.
I was gonna ask my next question is about Ella.
Ella.
My next question is about Ella. What is like the most exciting part about having a 7-month-old?
They start to recognize you, and so they're. I mean, this happens after maybe like 3 or 4 months,
Right.
but in their eyesight is.
They can finally
it's
see
not
further
developed.
than like right here.
Yeah. If I walk into the nursery, or just this morning I was walking in the kitchen, and she sort of like looks up, and then when she recognizes me, she's like, just has this joy, this expression of full joy, and that's just like, oh, and love me, and that like that the fact that she is like joyful multiple times a day when she gets to see me is like really special.
It's like a little motivation to keep going every single day, right? And keep fighting for the future.
And you just think people you love. I see my husband, and I don't get this every time I see him, and so it's maybe we should do that.
Maybe we should. I know it's what we do. We take for granted being around the people that we love a lot. And yeah, we should fix that. We should be more like Ella, the 7-month-old. Final question: what is your favorite thing about Maine?
People, and just to put a fine point on it, New York is like this, DC is like this, where you meet people and the first thing they want to know is like, what's your profession, and how can you possibly like help me?
How can we align?
And it was so refreshing when we moved. We live in a lobster village, and people. I spent months with it. Never asked what we did professionally. Didn't care. What are your interests? What do you talk about the weather? Lots of conversation about the weather. And that's just sort of a reminder of like, because it doesn't really fucking matter that much.
Yeah. Well, and also just like the neighborly vibe of bringing over cookies and introducing yourself. Like that's how we grew up. My friends in New York think I'm crazy because it's seared in my mind. A life event happens. You bring your daughter home from the hospital. I show up with food. That's what, someone passes away, I show up with food. It's your birthday, I'm going to give you some food. And people are like, that's weird. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. That's just what we do in the South.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
It's something you don't need to think about.
I think like 30% of the town has contributed to our camp. That's because it's a community, because they know, and I know them. And,
That's amazing. Jordan, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and for you being here. I'm super excited to follow this campaign and watch you win all 16 counties.
Thank you. Great to spend time with you. Look forward to talking again.
If you've made it this far, thank you so much. Thank you for following The Foolish Optimist. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, pretty much. We're going to be dropping new episodes every Wednesday, and you can watch the video episodes on YouTube. If you would like to, please give us a review, leave comments. You can also email us at thefoolishoptimistpodcast@gmail.com. If you see any really great candidates that I should be talking to, send them my way. Thank you.